Okay, so welcome to one and all. This is a series of webinars that we are doing from Telerik India for the APAC region. We call it as .NET Ninja webinar series. In this particular webinar today, we'll be looking more at MVVM using Kendo UI and validation using Kendo UI. Although the title says Introduction to Kendo UI, it's basically I just want to put this nice logo that we have for the brand. He's known as the Kendo man. So, so without much further ado, let me start the presentation. Just give me a second. So a little bit of introduction about myself. My name is Lohit GN. I work as a developer evangelist with Telerik. My official email ID is lohit.nagraj@telerik.com. So if any of you want to ping me on anything related to the Telerik, so you can send me an email to my official email ID. If some of you are on Twitter, I tweet with the handle @Kashyapa. So that's my handle. You can tweet. I keep regularly. I keep checking Twitter regularly. So that's one of the fastest way to kind of get into me. I will try to look at and then try to answer as fast as I can. I have my own blog. I blog at kashyapas.com. That's where I write mostly on ASP.NET because I'm an MVP in ASP.NET and IIS, so I keep writing about the general ASP.NET things at my blog. And myself, my colleagues, my colleague Dhananjay Kumar, who if you have already attended any of our webinars, you will know I have a colleague called Dhananjay Kumar. So myself, Dhananjay, and then Abhishek Kant, our country manager, we all three keep writing at telerikhelper.net. This is one place that you definitely need to bookmark if you're working on Telerik related things. We keep writing how-to articles in this particular blog. Anything related to all the Telerik areas, we keep just writing, starting from TeamPulse to Test Studio to the dev tools, you name it, we keep writing it there. So that's a brief introduction about me. So I'm sorry. So the today's main agenda was to learn about MVVM using Kendo UI and validation using Kendo UI. So if any of you in this webinar is looking for what exactly is MVVM, I'm not going to be going deep like a level 300 or 400 on MVVM, but I will touch upon what exactly is MVVM, give you a small little context as to what exactly is this MVVM, and then we will kind of segue into how you do that using Kendo UI, why you need Kendo UI, and then how you can do it with Kendo UI, why exactly you need something known as MVVM. We'll be pretty much looking towards those aspects, but not a deep dive into MVVM. So having said that context, so let's take a look at MVVM. What exactly is MVVM? I'm pretty sure if you are in .NET world, you would have heard about this acronym. It's basically nothing but it's an acronym. I'll tell you what exactly is that. But MVVM, anybody in WPF world, anybody in basically in the Silverlight world, or anybody on the XAML side would have spoken to you about, yeah, we do MVVM pattern. So, and also lately, if you are in a web world, and you would start seeing people talking about, yeah, in the JavaScript we are doing MVVM. So basically, we'll look at what exactly is this. So first, why do you need this something known as MVVM? So let's try to understand that. It's a known fact that today there is a lot of device and OS proliferation. You name a size, you have a device for that. For example, we started out with desktops, we have laptops, we have tablets, we have phones, we have netbooks, and then in terms of the OS, you have the Windows, you have the Macs, you have the Androids, you have the you name it. There's a lot of things going on in this in today. So you want to deliver something on all this platform. Basically, when I say deliver, it's actually the content. So how do you do it? So the only thing that can reach all this platform is a web app. You can write a web application and can be run. Basically, anybody on these platforms can view that web application because it's based on just the HTML and JavaScript, so which every platform has things. But there is a little bit of segue into that particular notion, that is the client side is now becoming complex. Your client side scripting, your client side programming, it's becoming a little bit complex, and then you have a need to model your data on the client side as well as the server, because it's going so enormously. Enterprise level projects are huge, very huge. A lot of things will be done in the JavaScript. So there is a need now to model your data even on the client side. We are traditionally have been programmed in such a way that we always create an object in C#. We always create an object in C#, but we never worried about so much in the client side. I keep saying, like, everybody writes JavaScript, right? So basically nowadays it's no more of that. It's more of pattern-based JavaScripting. Nobody writes JavaScript, rather they write jQuery. So jQuery is one of the good things that has happened. So basically what's happening there is, the client side has become very complex. We have a need to model the data so that we can work better. Also, you have a need to keep up with the changes that are happening on the server side, which are happening on the UI, the state of the application. The server sends you some data. On the UI, you have a couple of, maybe a text box or something. So you are pretty much, changing something on the user is changing something on the UI, and then your state of the app keeps changing. So you have to keep track of that. So that's why you need a pattern-based approach to your JavaScript programming. And then one of the best used or best suited patterns that people have found, or the purists have found, is MVVM. So now we're going to look at what exactly is an MVVM. It's nothing but a design pattern. It's not a language. It's nothing new. It's just a design pattern. A pattern is nothing but, if you have a repeating problem, people in the industry have already defined certain well-tested mechanisms to solve that problem. That's known as a pattern. So in a way, in MVVM2, it's actually a pattern. It's an acronym for model, view, and a view model. So M, model, V, view, VM, the view model. So what is a model? Model is actually your data. So what is a view? View is actually your UI. Anything that constitutes a UI element can be called as a view, and then anything that does not constitute a UI element, but rather it's a piece of information, I classify that as data. So now what exactly is this view model? This view model is responsible for exposing your data objects, meaning the UI should never know from where it is getting the data. The data should never know where exactly the UI is, or what exactly is the UI is. Data has to be data, UI has to be UI. So the view model makes it possible that view needs a piece of property. View model will expose it and then say, okay, here it is, take it. And then the view will say, hey, I need to do something. So the view model will take care of, okay, you need to go get the data. Okay, I'll do it for you. You don't worry, just let me know. So that's what, basically, these three things play around: model, view, and a view model. So you have a piece of data, you have a UI coming up, and then view model tries to glue between all these two guys. And then, of course, there are many frameworks available in the market, and then one of them is Kendo UI. So we're going to just briefly look at what exactly Kendo UI is all about. So the problem today we have is multiple small scope libraries, non-unified frameworks, unpredictable roadmaps, unsupported code. So what do I mean by multiple small scope libraries? Basically, can you guys hear me? I'm getting many people saying they've lost my voice. So can somebody tell me, like, you're able to hear me? Okay, thank you. So basically, the small scope libraries are nothing but, you have pretty much, you have a need for charting, you have a need for, let's say, data binding. So what you do is, jQuery is your core dependency, but on top of that, you will go and then say, get me plugin X, get me plugin Y, and then you will start putting a lot of plugins within your project. So that's what I mean by small scope libraries. Non-unified frameworks. You don't know who wrote plugin X, you don't know who wrote plugin Y, and what frameworks they're using. You just go ahead and then say, okay, this supports this, let me use it. And then you'll start seeing your programmers writing different code pieces, because the particular library supports that way. Unpredictable roadmap, because these are all open source, and then nobody can actually guide somebody saying, like, hey, I'm using your library, and then I'm so and so, I'm an organization XYZ, we have a product coming up, so can you provide me this feature? No, the guy will say, hey, it's open source, can you pretty much go ahead, take the code, write on your own? So now the onus is on you to go through the 1,000 lines of codes and then change it. Unsupported code. Sometimes what happens is the jQuery keeps moving, but the plugin was written for 1.8 1.x or whatever it is, but the jQuery moved to 2.0. So who's going to give you that support, when it breaks? So nobody. It's open source, so you have to take care of it. So that's where Kendo UI come to the rescue. It makes your JavaScript development a piece of cake. So we'll let you know how. In a nutshell, Kendo UI is nothing but client-side HTML5 based JavaScript library. So I'm seeing questions where it's used. Can I use for Windows Mobile or only for Androids? Kendo UI is actually, I'll show you in the next slide, what exactly is Kendo UI is made up of. Basically, in a nutshell, as I said, it's a JavaScript library. It's HTML5 based, and then it's a client side. As I said, it's based on jQuery. jQuery is the only dependency that we have as part of Kendo UI. HTML5, we support CSS3. Of course, it's a framework for two things, desktop and mobile. When I say desktop, it's all about desktop browser. Don't get confused as to, okay, can I create a desktop application using Kendo UI? No. Desktop, when I say, it's mostly about desktop browser, traditional browser-based apps, like you have a web page coming up. So on the web page, yes, you can use JavaScript library. Now, mobile is an interesting piece. We support what we call as hybrid mobile application development, wherein Kendo UI is the only library that I know of can do an adaptive rendering. Meaning, if you use Kendo UI mobile controls and let's say a button, and then create a mobile app, it can be deployed on any platform that you know of on the mobile world. The button used, a Kendo button, will look like an iOS button when it renders on an iOS device. It will look like an Android button when it renders on Android, and so and so. The Windows Phone or BlackBerry or Migo, so you name it, so it runs. So we're not going to talk about that, whereas we're going to be looking at Kendo UI Web today. So why Kendo UI? You may ask, it's a single package. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to take anything other than Kendo UI. It contains UI widgets. It contains framework. It is modular. And also we provide data binding out of the box, meaning we have a concept of data source within the JavaScript. And also we support MVVM out of the box. I'm pretty sure that many of you will come back with a question saying like, how is this compared to XYZ? So I understand there are XYZ frameworks, but I just now in the previous slide I said there are small scope libraries, so they all come under that particular segment. Meaning, if you want MVVM today and you are using jQuery, you will go ahead and kind of include another plugin or another framework. So you do not need anything here. Kendo UI can give you the UI widgets, can give you some framework things, can give you the modular approach of doing things. Data source, and then of course out of the box MVVM is supported. We do have a data visualization package. And then the hybrid mobile apps is like native-like, meaning adaptive rendering. We follow the latest web standards, and we also have aggressive release schedules, only 3 releases in a year. So this is what Kendo UI is all about. As you see on the bottom, we have the 3 main things which make up Kendo UI. We have Kendo UI Web, which gives you UI widgets for the web world, meaning web applications or web pages. It's a framework again. It contains framework. It has browser-based desktop or mobile. It can, when you create a page, a web page using Kendo UI Web, it can run on any of the touch devices because the Kendo UI Web controls are touch ready. Data viz, it's basically the Kendo UI also has a data visualization package, and then you don't have to go behind again plugin XYZ because it's already covered. We give you charts. We give you gauges. Last but not the least, the mobile, which is most exciting piece here. It can be used. Kendo UI mobile controls can be used for hybrid apps. It's a pure HTML and CSS based framework, and it renders a native UI look and feel when it runs on a device. Now these are 3 individual pieces that we give you. If you want, you can take complete, and also we have something known as Kendo UI complete wrappers, meaning if you are as I said, this is all JavaScript client-side framework. So let's assume you do not like to write a lot of JavaScript. What you can do is we have server-side wrappers for ASP.NET MVC, PHP, and then Java, JSP. So you can program in your native comfortness. If you are coming from a Razor syntax, you can pretty much say html.kendo.grid, html.kendo.chart. That's it, and then it will spit out. Again, I'm reiterating this. The wrappers are not generating the markup, rather they're spitting out the JavaScript that is necessary to be run on the client side, and everything happens on the client side. So the server side wrappers that we have, they help you to write JavaScript code in your native language. For example, Razor or a C# in .NET. In JSP, you can use the taglets. In PHP, you can do pretty much your PHP-based coding, and then it will spit out the necessary JavaScript for you, and then everything, the magic happens on the client side. So this is how the package is. Kendo UI Web is where today we're going to be looking at. So UI widgets, grid, menu, tab strip, editor, etc. We have around 20 plus controls or widgets as we call for the website. So it's all, and we also have the client-side data source. We have MVVM out of the box. We support templating. We support drag and drop animations, built-in touch support. So we're going to be looking more at MVVM story today. How Kendo UI makes it easy to generate to develop MVVM. So MVVM in Kendo, it's basically three pieces, three core pieces. We have observable object, as the name says. See, basically, when it comes to MVVM, the core piece or the core tenet of MVVM pattern is that if you have a view and if you have a model, somebody needs to do a two-way binding between these two guys. Meaning, if something is entered on the view in a text box, the same thing should be updated in the model's property. If something is changed through code in the model's property, that should be updated on the view. So view model is like a glue between the model and the view, and then we use this observable objects, observable array, so that they fire the notification when something is changed. So you cannot just create a JavaScript object and then expect that two-way binding can be done. So we make help of this framework objects known as observable object and observable array. What they do is they actually give you certain benefits, like whoever has subscribed to these changes, they will intimate them when there is a change. So we're going to look at all this stuff. There are certain things like what we call as binding, meaning on the UI element we can go ahead and then create binding, saying like, hey, you know what, I want the value property of this UI element to be bound to name property of a model object. So that's what the bindings is all about. So I'm going to show you all the examples. So I'm just running through the slides so that we can get to the meat of the webinar today. So observable object, as I said, it's Kendo or data.observable object, supports change tracking and notify subscribers. So that is the important thing, supports change tracking. I'll show you code where without MVVM what you need to do, and then with MVVM what are the changes that you get. This is how you use it. You just say new Kendo.data.observable object and then just create your object. So field 1 now becomes a property, and if somebody changes field 1, it gets a notification to anybody who is listening to that. Some of the things that it supports a field called as UID, the property. Some of the methods like bind, get, pair, and set to JSON. We'll look at get and set today, and then also to JSON. Some of the events that it supports is change, like when the object changes. If somebody wants to do extra bit of work, we can do that. Observable array it's just a wrapping around the normal array, but with a change tracking capability. So that's how you see here. You can just say Kendo.data.observable array and then just keep creating your array. As you can see, I have a complex object being kept in the array, and I also have a simple primitive string being kept in the array. So it also provides all the array constructs, but one main thing is change tracking. If you add something to the array, this guy will notify you saying like, hey, there's a new thing added. So if somebody is bound, they will get updated with the new thing. Okay, now let's see some action. We'll go through a couple of things here now. So for many of you, if you are not from, Kendo UI does not depend on any particular, what do you call the, one second, let me clear this off. Kendo UI does not depend on any particular server-side technology, as long as you can just provide data using JSON or XML endpoints. We just work with any technology. So what I'm showing you here is, this is a Visual Studio. I'm using this as the editor. What I have done is I've just created a web application, but you can notice that my extension is an HTML file. I'm just using this because Visual Studio 2012 and .NET 4.5 has a new capability called as Page Inspector. So without having to leave the Visual Studio, I can actually show you the results in the right-hand side. What you see on the right is a Page Inspector. Now if I just go back here and then say test and then say control KG, you see that the right hand side, it shows whatever is done. So it's actually running my application without opening IE. So this is like a quick check. So I'm making use of this capability within Visual Studio to basically code everything. So that has got nothing to do with Kendo or anything. I just wanted to make sure people don't get like, what exactly is happening. So now in order to use Kendo, you just need a couple of things. I'm just now pinning my solution explorer. I think I didn't open my, let me open my Zoom it. 1 second. Yes, my Zoom it is ready now. So as you can see, this is just a plain ASP.NET application, but doesn't need to be. I'm just using this for a demo purpose. What I've done is I've created a Kendo styles folder and then, okay, let me expand this. So if you see here, inside content, I have Kendo and then it uses a bunch of style sheets. And in the script folder, what I've done is I've added only 2 things. You can see like, I need jQuery and then I need this kendo.web.min.js. That's all is required to convert any application into a Kendo UI based application. The UI can be completely changed with only these changes. So now how does this change get affected? In this example, we will not be using anything Kendo, but I'm just using this Kendo style sheet so that when I create a text box, it looks very neat. When I create something like a button, it looks neat. Now currently, I'm going to show you an example wherein without MVVM, how do you guys program today, in your day-to-day things when it comes to maybe creating a applications. So let's say what I'm going to do is I'm going to pretty much now have a couple of things. I'm trying to do an expense tracking application. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add, now let's see what came up. So as you can see, I've just added type is equal to food on the right hand side. If you see here, keep looking on my right hand side. So I'm just putting a text box now. Yeah, I'm using it. I mean, I'll come to MVVM. Some of the questions I'm getting is, can you show a demo using MVVM? Yes, I'll come there, but I want to first make a point that, how do you code without MVVM? Predominantly everybody would be doing this. So I just want to show what the differences. So I'm going to add a couple of things here now. So I added a merchant, and then I want to track the amount. So I have added the amount, and then I need a button so that I can go ahead and then create it. So let me refresh the page now. You can see on my right hand side, like, all I have done is I added a select box. I've added a text box for typing a merchant name. I've added text box for typing the amount. Then what I want to do is I want to show the expenses as a table, right? So as you can see here on my left hand side, I just have a div and then I have a table. Now, given this, now if I refresh the page, you will see like, you're getting this. Okay, let me go ahead and then add a, first will be type, and then next will be merchant, and then I have an amount. So now when I refresh the page, you can see on the right hand side, I have a drop down for what type of expense is that, who was the merchant, where I did the food shopping or whatever it is, amount, and then I have a button to add, and then this is the table where we will try to showcase. Now the idea is I want to come in and then keep on adding it. So what do you do when you do that particular thing, right? So basically, so you will start doing this document.ready, and then I want to write a function. So what is that function? I will basically say I'll grab the button called create. Remember, we have a button here whose ID is create, and then I'm going to say like, on click of the button I want to do something. So what will be that something? I want to go ahead, capture this type merchant amount values, and then append it to this table. So basically what you will do is pay close attention to this line which says hash expenses dot append. You're doing tr, td, and then you're doing dollar type option selected dot text, hash merchant dot text, hash amount dot text. So what are these things? These things are nothing but the controls that are there, right? Anytime the name changes, you're doomed. You have to come again and then kind of pretty much you have to do changes here. So now once after this, I want to clear the form, right? So basically, user has clicked on, he has already clicked on the add button, so I should be adding it. Afterwards, I want to clear it. So that's what I have done now. So let's see what happens with this. So now I select food and I say I had gone to McD and I spent some 100 rupees. So what you can see now is, yes, this is working. Like basically, if you look at the table, I added a row now. So now I'm going to say shopping. Maybe I went to Central and then I spent maybe 1,000 rupees there. So you can see this is working. But did you notice what was the way you done it? There's no pattern, meaning all you did was on document ready, you just grabbed the create button and then you just said on click function expenses, and then you're doing a lot of things. The only thing that you could have changed here is maybe you could have templatized this, but other than that, there's nothing else. If there is a change coming up, it's not easy to track it. Now we're going to go to how you do the same thing with MVVM. So let me open up with MVVM. Let me basically come back here and then clean up everything. I've been practicing for a while, so everything is here. So I'm just going to keep it blank. So okay, now we'll see the magic of Kendo. So what I've done is I have included style sheets. So we need two style sheets. One is common.css, which contains all the common things, and then this blue opal is the theme that we have. We have around 7 or 8 themes. So kendo.something.min.css will be a theme, whereas common is not a theme, it's common based things are in it. As I said, we depend only on jQuery, so I have included jQuery.min.js. And then I need kendo.web.min.js. So this is the guy who knows what to do on a web page. What are the things that needs to be done on a web page. Now I'm going to completely change. If you are paying attention, when we did the without MVVM example, I started out with the UI. Now I'm going to completely change the way I do it. So what I'm going to do is, first I want to model, as you know, on the right hand side we have a table. So my model now is I want to get this list of expenses, items that I've added. So that's an array. So what I will do is, basically I will create an expense model. So remember I talked about observable array. So what I did was I said, hey, you know what? I want to have something called as expenses, but that's an observable array. If somebody adds to that, I want somebody else to react to that. Okay. So next what we'll do is, now we'll create a view model for that. So this I term it as my model. In this example, this is my model because I am interested in getting the list of items. Then what I do is I pretty much go and then create my view model. Again, the view model is an observable object. It's not an array because it's not an array. It's a pure object that I want to keep track of. So what I will do is, now within the expense view model, remember I talked expense view model is the one which exposes the data to the UI. So UI need not know about the expenses. So you can actually put expenses within expense view model or whatever it is, the way you want to do it. But in an example, I'm just trying to showcase, like, this is how it does. So this is my view model. So now what we do is, in the view model, we'll go and say, hey, view model, your model is actually expenses. So that's all we have to say. Now the view model knows that it is working on expenses. Those of you who are typing questions, please remember that I will be answering you. So just type it once and then leave it. I'll take a look at it. I see many people putting it again and again, thinking it's not being answered. So don't worry, just log it once. I'll go through them and then I'll come back to you. I want to just finish the major important pieces of this webinar, which is the code, the MVVM code. So now what I will do is, you remember we have a drop down which showed food, shopping, bills, and all the stuff. So I want to create an array and call it as, like, so this basically what it does is it gives me a way to bind these data that I have, like food, merchant, bills, to the drop down. So I'll show you how that is done. So next what we do is I want to maintain a value of what is the current expense type that the user has selected. So I'm going to say, like, by default expense type is food. That's just a convention that I'm following. And then I want two more variables for, you remember we have merchant and an amount. So I want to have this. So now what we just did was we just created an view model where we are containing the model that we need, and then we are doing some of the UI related stuff. So this type drop down, remember in the previous example there was a select box and it was the values were typed as an HTML. Now we don't need to. So I'll show you how this can be done. Next, when we have an add button, so what needs to be done when add button is clicked, right? So basically we need to handle the create stuff. So I'll show you this create method. Just take a look at the create method. I know user has typed something on type, merchant, and amount. I need to just take that and then push it into my model, which is nothing but an array, right? So all I'm doing is, I know I have a property called model, and then the model is actually an array. So I just say this.get. So this is another interesting thing, that is, when you do an observable object, you cannot just say this.model, then the change tracking is lost. Okay, so what you need to do is you would always have to say this.get the property and then do whatever you want. Now if I change anything, the change tracking is invoked, and then it will be able to notify anybody. So for example, this expense type, merchant, amount, you see this, I'm saying for the array, just push a new item which is type, merchant, amount, this.get expense type, this.get merchant, this.get amount, and then I'm clearing the form. So now just imagine, by doing this dot set and then the property and then a new value, what is happening is it does a two things. One is it knows there is a change happening, so it tracks the change, and then it knows that there is somebody listening to that. Who is that somebody? That's this drop down, and that's this text box and another text box. So it will automatically go update them with the new value. So that's the two-way binding that we are talking about. Now we pretty much are done with our what do you call the view model. Now let's start seeing how this gets wired with the UI. So I'm going to go ahead and then bring in the same UI that we had. Remember, we had this, and then we had this. So here is a new change that I'm going to show you. Now, no need of putting all this in the HTML. All you need to do is data role is equal to drop down list. Okay, and then we have a concept of binding. So I just have to say, hey, I want you to bind the source of this drop down list to, we have type. Remember, we created a type array. So all I'm saying is I want the source to be bound to the type, and also the value, select will always have a value. I want this value to be expense type. Okay, and now if it is a select box, we all know that we have a name and a value property. So I want the data text field to be name, because remember in the type array we have a name and a value columns, and then data dash value field equals value. So that's all. Now when I run this, okay, we have got nothing. That is because there's one main important thing that we need to do. With Kendo, we need to invoke the Kendo's binding mechanism. So we are saying, hey, I want you to go through all the document.body.children and then loop through them and then use this view model as a binding context. So it's pretty similar to what you guys do in WPF. You just say data context is equal to view model. So similarly, we are saying Kendo.bind document.body expense is a spelling mistake. Thank you very much. Otherwise, I would have spent some time going through that. Thank you very much. So let's see what happens. Boom. Did you guys notice on the right hand side? Yeah, now you will see it's reflected on your UI. I just created this select box into a fine clean, neat looking with the color coded things, and also I'm getting the data. So this is what binding is all about. If you see here, I just said data dash bind, source is a type, value is expense type. So what is type? Type is an array, it's a plain array. And then what is expense type? It's just a property with a value food. So now if you see here, it has highlighted, it has brought all the data, and then it has highlighted food because that's the one which is selected. Okay, now this is good. So we're making some progress now. So we need a couple of more things, and next one is merchant. So with merchant, what I will do is I'll just say class is a K text box so that it looks neat, and then here again I need to bind this with a value, right? So what is it that I want to bind? I want to bind the value property of that input element to, I have a property called merchant on my view model. Similarly, let's go ahead and then do it for amount. Sorry. So for amount, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say class equals K text box, and then again data bind equals value colon, I have an amount property, right? So now what we did was we pretty much finished up all the things. So now again, remember, we need to show this expenses, right? So let me bring back that thing. Instead of a table, now you will see a magic. What I'm going to do is I will say I want to place a div, but div's data role, I want to convert this as a grid, and data bind, I want to give the source as, remember our model, the model is where I'm keeping all my expense items. So I just say source is model, and then I will say data dash columns. I have to tell what columns to showcase. So what I will do is I will say this is, I need to show type, I need to show we have merchant, and we have amount. That's all. So now let's see what happens when I, okay, I have a problem, 1 second. Sorry, spelling mistake here. Yeah, thank you very much, Karthikeyan. Yep. Now you see on the right hand side, we have recreated the same things, but now what has happened is if I type something in the merchant, it will be doing a two-way data binding because I've bound everywhere. Now let's see what happens when I do a create. Remember, in the create, all we are doing is we have bound the select box to this particular variable called expense type. We have bound the merchant text box to this variable called merchant. We have bound amount to this variable called amount. But when I click on create, okay, we need an add button. So I missed an add button here. So let me get the button. So even for the button, what we can do is, we don't have to do anything else other than say data bind on click, I want the create method to be executed. So let me go ahead and then refresh this. You will see an add button coming now, and then when I click, it's going to invoke the create button. So just pay attention to the create method. All I'm doing here is I'm just having pushing the new values from there. But look at this dot get. I never went to dollar get that ID called as merchant and then dot text or value. I'm not doing anything. Rather, this is all pure JavaScript object-based things. So let's say I went to MACD and then I have 100. Do you see the grid coming up now? The grid has already started working now. That is because the grid is bound. If you look at here, the grid is bound to the model. What is the model? Model is nothing but an expenses array. So it's in kendo.data.observableArray. And what I did in create method, I just said get me that model, push a new item to that model. That's it. And then after that I'm clearing the form. If you see the form, whatever I had entered, it's cleared now. So now when I come back here and then say I went let's say bills, and this is my telephone, and then let's say I spent 1,000 on that guy. So you can see that now, the grid is coming up. Not only that, you can see that, I can pretty much put a sorting, everything that can be done. Yes, the grid can be customized. I'm just showing a very bare bone minimal demo of this. So the main idea here is how Kendo makes it easy for you to work with this MVVM. MVVM is just this concept of a two-way binding, no more of those traditional yeah, the UI is pretty good now. That's what the Kendo UI Web does. That's what the Kendo UI Web controls do. So this is about, a brief intro about how you program MVVM. There's got nothing to do with Kendo itself, but I'm telling you the concept of MVVM. We created a model, we created a view model, we bound the UI with the view model, but Kendo comes into the picture with this observable array concept, observable object concept. You notice that I have just bound expense type merchant amount to the UI, but when something is typed in the UI, these values are automatically updated, so I'm able to read it. So this is what MVVM all about, and this is how Kendo UI helps you to achieve it easily. So let's go back to the slide. So that's what we saw, some demo on the MVVM side. So the Kendo has an inbuilt MVVM concept or package, or I will say like it's a framework, basically it's a feature. So it's already inbuilt in Kendo UI. You don't need any other extra plugin. So that's the main highlight here. So Kendo UI is all you need to achieve all these things. When it comes to validation, let's yeah, currently I am not connected to any database, but yeah, here's an interesting thing. Let's go ahead and then quickly alter the script. What I'm going to do is I'm going to just quickly say put a text area, and then I'm going to say show me around 10 rows with 70 columns, and then I will say data dash bind, and I will say I want the value of this bound to, let's say, data as JSON. Okay, but where is this? So, okay, we're going to add it onto the expense view model now. So this is what the power of MVVM is all about. So I can just come back here and then say function, and what I want to do in the function is I know that I have my model, right? My model is nothing but an array. So let's say I will say this dot get my model, and my model supports a method called as toJSON. So this is because of the Kendo.data.observableArray. It provides this construct, but I cannot show this now as is because JSON will be an object. So let's do JSON.stringify, and I will pass the JSON object. So now let's say I'm going to okay, what is it saying? It doesn't have an ending tag. Yes, I'll put an ending tag. Let me refresh that. Okay, everybody pay attention to the text area which is there on the bottom of the grid. Now I'm going to go and then say do the same thing. MACD, I spent $100. You see that the power of MVVM? I didn't do anything. All I did was created a property, and I said data bind to that property. That's it. And in the expense view model, we have this. But how did this guy get invoked when I added a new item? That is because when we do this dot get, the Kendo framework knows that he is a subscriber. Data as JSON is a subscriber. Oh, the model changed, so I need to go and then notify the subscriber. So he will notify. You do not have to call it. Now let's go and then add one more. The same thing. I will say my telephone bill. And don't worry about the spelling now. You see this? The grid gets a second row, but to look at the data as JSON, I have my things that I need to be seeing as a JSON. So assume that you have a scenario wherein you need to send data as JSON. So there you have it. You do not have to do anything else except just use this data as JSON, and then just you get a JSON string, just post it. So do whatever you want to do. I'm just showing you a standalone web application, JavaScript based app, wherein I'm not doing some pretty much anything other than just to extract out the JSON string, but you can do anything with this by posting to somewhere, right? So that's the concept of how this view model, everything helps you. If you didn't convert it into JSON, it will be an object, JSON object. Like for example, let me go ahead quickly and then on the fly change this demo. I will say this, and then I go refresh it, and I say food is from McD. I have $100. You see this? It says object. That is because that's what the native thing about that object is. Okay. So now that's about the MVVM. Let's quickly look at the validation. Just forget there is something called as Kendo UI validation. Okay. Other than that, what is exactly is happening in the industry? In the industry, we have now something known as HTML5 form validation. So what exactly is this HTML5 form validation? Well, it's nothing but certain validation attributes have been defined, which are anticipated feature of HTML5. These validation attributes set constraints on HTML inputs, and basically some of the attributes are required, pattern, min, max, and also all the other HTML5 data types, like you can say input type is equal to URL, input type is equal to email. These are the new HTML5 types. When you use them, the browser will actually validate the input to see if it matches the constraint that have been put on the control. So before the submission, input fails the constraints, browser will display a message. So that's what HTML5 form validation is all about. So meaning now you do not have to write so many JavaScripts, because everything has been offloaded onto the browser. Browser has the capability now to basically do a lot of things. So that's about HTML5 validation, but let me tell you what are the problems with HTML5 validation. HTML5 validation is great, but old browsers offer no support to HTML5, meaning even if you take Internet Explorer, I think Internet Explorer 9 to some extent, but 10 is S, which is doing everything. Similarly, that's the case with many of the browsers. Not everybody's old version of the browser support HTML5. Not only that, support in modern browsers is incomplete. Even today only Opera is the only one which supports all the HTML5 validation, whereas Chrome, Firefox, and IE, they do not. So you still have a problem. If you completely leverage HTML5's form validation, not everybody supports it. So the browser created validation error message, it's difficult to restyle. You just cannot go ahead and then do some things. What is the solution? Basically, the solution is to augment the HTML5 form validation with JavaScript. What do I mean by that? Try to use HTML5 when it can be. Otherwise, fall back to the JavaScript where it doesn't support HTML5. So that's what Kendo UI does. What Kendo UI Validator does is it augments the HTML5 validation with JavaScript, works with standard HTML form attributes, but automatically makes this work in all browsers. We support, when I say all browsers, we support IE7 Plus and any of the other browsers. So it gives you a couple amount of customizability in terms of, okay, writing custom rules, writing custom messages. You can go and then style the way you want the error messages to look like. So basic usage is something like this. You just have to come back to your script and say, hey, you know what, I have a form. I want that to be converted into a Kendo validator. That's it. That's all is required to be done. Then when you're submitting, all you need to do is you just have to check, hey, validator, is the form valid? So you just call the validate method, and it can give you the value, the true or false, the boolean, to tell like the form is valid or not. Some of the customization that you can do is custom rules, custom validation message. For example, I can just go back in here and say, hey, I have a custom rule. The rule name is custom, and I have the business logic in that custom rule is I just want to check that input, and if it is equal, the value is equivalent to test or not. So message, I can come back here and then say, hey, you know what, I want you should enter the name as test. So that's how the customization you can do. So let's quickly take a look at that. In the interest of time, I think I have only 8 minutes. So what I have done is I've already prepared the page. So it's basically, as you can see here, I'll try to tell you the salient points. There is nothing much, as you can see on the right hand side. I have an input type text. Only thing that I've done is I've created a placeholder, which is an HTML5 attribute. I've created a required attribute, which is again HTML5. And I have a very specific attribute called as validation message, which is Kendo specific. And notice that it supports the same thing. Please enter. This will be the name of the ID of the field. Similarly, what I've done is I've created required field validator, all those things, and then look at this. this is a select box, and I have said required, and this is another way you can use HTML5, but it will work even in a non-HTML5 browser because Kendo knows how to deal with this. So all you need to say is data-require-message. So you can say select the start time. So basically, so similarly, what I've done is I created a lot of controls, and then I have said, like, I want you to, everybody is required, and then email format is not valid. So if you see here, input type is equal to email is what we have done. This is the new HTML5 format, that is input type is equal to email. And then I have said, I want this to be required. So by default, what it will do is if you leave email blank, it will say, hey, email is required. But if you enter something and then that's not a valid email, it will say email format is not valid. So that is because Kendo will look for this data-email-message. So similarly, I've kept everything. So let's try to click on submit button now on the right hand side. Keep looking for the form now. So if you can see here, it said please enter full name. So I'll just go ahead and then say Lohit. So as you can see, as soon as I mouse over, it's gone. That is because by default Kendo will fire on mouse up, or the key on blur. So it will take care of that. So this movie, I can leave it as is. Now this start time, if I come back here and then leave it, it will say select start time. And then again amount, if I do this, okay, I need this way. So amount is required. Email, you see this? It says email is required. Now let's try to put something and then try to go ahead. And then phone. And then you do this. So basically what it has happened is, since none of the, I haven't submitted fulfilled everything. So it says, oops, there is an invalid data in the form. So let's select Pulp Fiction here. And then I'll say amount is 1. I want, and then select time. I want to go for, let's say, 5 o'clock movie. I've given. Okay, now when I say submit, hooray, your ticket has been booked. So how did we do this? As I said, I have a form. So the form name is tickets, and I've just said Kendo Validator. That's all. And then when you click on the button, I'm just doing validator.validate. If it is a valid, I will say, hooray, your ticket has been booked. Otherwise, I'll say, oops, there's an invalid data in the form. So this is a very short example of how the validator can be used. If you go online to our demos, you will find an extensive demos. In the interest of the time, I just had to kind of talk about some of the things that we support. As I said, if you use Kendo, okay, let's try to open this in an IE, and then I'll show you a neat trick that we do. As I said, we support IE 7 plus, right? So whatever you saw me doing was actually something which is supported in HTML5. I have all the HTML5 constructs, right? So let's see, this is IE 10, by the way, that I'm using on Windows 7. So I will do the same thing. Let me leave some things, and yeah, let me leave something. So you saw that there is an error. Now, I'm pretty sure most of you know what is an IE developer tools. So I'm just going to bring the IE developer tool, and then I'm going to go to the document modes, and you can see here we have different modes available, and we support IE 7 plus. So what I will do is I will set this to IE 8, and let's try to submit the form again. Can you see this? It didn't change. It shows the same UI. Although the constructs that you had used was HTML5 based constructs, but you are running in IE8 mode, and IE8 is a non-HTML5 supporting browsers. But still, the Kendo UI validation, it's going to run. That is because that's the magic we do. What we do is we see that this is not HTML5, but in the background, we go ahead and then pretty much we pump in the JavaScript. So we do everything for you. You do not have to do pretty much anything except just go and say, hey, I want this form to be converted as a validator, and then when you click on a button, just call the Kendo validator.validate. That's it, and then it's going to work in a non HTML5 browser, IE 7 plus, and then all the other browsers. So that's pretty much what we had for the day. I see a lot of questions now, but in the interest of the time, we are 2 minutes to 4, but if you are okay to stay maybe 10 minutes more, what we will do is we'll pretty much kind of take the questions one by one. I see already Abhishek has been trying to answer most of the questions that are there. So thank you, Abhishek. So let me start going one by one. Hi, I am new to MVVM as well as good knowledge on HTML, but I want to know the Kendo. Yes, what you can do. Okay, Abhishek has already answered. Thank you, Abhishek. Not able to hear you. Okay, let's pass through all these things. Where are the questions coming? Yeah, there's a question, Vijay Sharath Parthasarathi, how to display a validation error tooltip so it will not disturb the controls beside it. Yeah, what you can do is there are a couple of, there's a way to do this, meaning you can actually dedicate a very specific space and give it a very specific class name, and then basically Kendo will try to look at it and then try to push the message in that one rather than it automatically doing an append child to the next thing. So you can pretty much do that one. And then yeah, there was a question like, is MVVM used for Silverlight application as well, right? So as Abhishek had already said, MVVM is just a pattern that can be applied anywhere, but it's just that you need to see if the platform supports it. The XAML platform supports it very well, the WPF, the Silverlight, the Windows Phone, the Windows 8, because the concept of data binding is very powerful there. So that's what MVVM is all about, the data binding stuff to a greater extent. So yes, so now we have brought that to the JavaScript too, using Kendo. Can I use Kendo UI for Windows Mobile or only for Androids? Kendo UI Mobile controls, one of the pillars that I showed you, can be used to create what we call as hybrid mobile applications, meaning these apps are written in HTML5, JavaScript, and CSS, but can be packaged to run on iOS, can be packaged to run on Android, can be packaged to run on Windows Phone, can be packaged to run on BlackBerry. So all these platforms are supported. So you would need to include Kendo UI Mobile Control, download for 30-day trial. We have it at kendoui.com, and then you can pretty much create an app using our controls. Well, what exactly? There's another question. What exactly is the difference between MVC and MVVM? Well, I don't know if we have time for that. It's a couple of architectural patterns, so it's going to be slightly different in the way it's implemented. Gyan Singh, we have already answered you. Can you use Kendo UI for Windows Mobile or only for Androids? We have already answered you. Can we see example of multiple small scope libraries? Well, I don't want to name them, but yeah, you go ahead and then search for a plugin, and then it does only one thing. That's the small scope libraries. For example, jQuery, you need it. For charting, you will go and then use maybe some other plugin X to do the charting. For visualization, you may use something else. For binding, you may use something else. So that's what we meant by small scope libraries. Can we use Kendo using C# using .NET? Yes, there is a wrapper available for ASP.NET MVC. All they do is they spit the JavaScript for you, but you will be writing your own Razor syntaxes like html.kendo.grid or html.kendo.chart, and then set up dot paging, dot sorting, dot filtering. Just it's for you. It's like a fluent interface object, and you are just chaining it, whereas the wrappers will convert all your chains into a JavaScript equivalent code, and they spit JavaScript, not the the markup. Gyan Singh, is MVVM an extension of MVP? No, it's not an extension of MVP. It's completely different. So I would better say, just search for Wikipedia or something. Okay, let me see. What's the difference between MVVM and MVC? From the explanation you're given, it looks like the same methodology. Well, there is a slight difference, but it's a marginal difference. But I would request you to just search it up, because I'm just trying to see if there's anything Kendo related that I can answer. Is it mandatory to use MVVM with Kendo UI? Nope. It's up to you. Kendo UI is all about a couple of things. One is the UI widgets that I talked about. So that's where the maximum thing is there. So it will work with a normal JavaScript too. You do not have to follow the MVVM way, but I'm just showing a pattern-based development that you should be actually learning, that you should be practicing, and you should be coding on your enterprise projects. Well, pretty much Abhishek has been answering all of them. Abhishek, are you there? Is there anything that I need to pick up?
There's still a lot of sorry, there's still a lot of questions coming in. So
maybe we'll take it for 5 more minutes, and then we'll save that and then write it in the blog post. So it's 4:03. I will keep going on if you guys are still here for another 5 more minutes or 10 more minutes, and then I'll see whatever I can do that. Could you please show a demo? Yeah, could you please, Pramod Gupta, you have a question. Could you please show a demo using MVVM? That's what I did. My second demo was the, using MVVM. The first one was without MVVM. Okay, let me come back from the bottom. There are a lot many things there. We can use a mix of Kendo UI and normal controls in the apps? Absolutely, it's up to you. You can pretty much, Murthy AN, I think this is your question. Can we use a mix of Kendo UI and normal controls in the apps? It's up to you. If you don't, like for example, you can have an HTML input text box, which is the plain HTML, but the grid can be Kendo grid. So any dependent, and then so that's what it is. Manoj Chaudhary, you're saying any dependency on jQuery? Yes, the only dependency Kendo UI has is jQuery. We just depend on jQuery, nothing else. So in your project, you have only two dependency to worry about. One is jQuery, another one is Kendo. And we as Kendo, currently we are supporting 1.8, I believe. We'll be moving ahead to whatever is there in the next queue. But we will make sure we don't break out anything. If jQuery moves up, we'll make sure all our code bases gets updated, and then we don't break if somebody is on Kendo Q1 2012, we'll make sure that doesn't break. Sundar Rajan Santanam, you're asking for, is there any webinar to use Icenium with Kendo UI? We have done a couple of webinars on Icenium. What you can do is go to www.telerik-helper.net and then search for webinar category, and you will see all the blog posts that we have done on Icenium. We have done quite a number of Icenium based webinars, so I would say please go there and then have a look at that. Will it be redundant to use jQuery or jQuery mobile? Murthy AN. This is the confusion everybody has. jQuery has got nothing to do with jQuery mobile. jQuery mobile is completely for touch-based mobile related UI things. They say jQuery mobile, but it's all about that. You have some things that work for touch, so you should be using jQuery mobile on if you're targeting for touch-based devices, because the button clicks, everything is a touch on a device. It's not a click like you do in a browser. So that's the difference. Suman Chatterjee, does the MVVM feature comes in the Kendo MVC library? Oh, absolutely. It's the core. It's there in the core, in the framework. It's got nothing to do with a version numbering. You have a Kendo UI license. You have MVVM out of the box there. So that's what I've been trying to tell you guys, that Kendo comes packaged with MVVM. It's just that you need to use it. Karthikeyan, is NUnit can be used efficiently in MVVM like that of MVC? I'm not sure what you're talking about, so sorry about that. Gyan Singh, why use MVVM? I think I just had a slide deck where I talked about why you should use MVVM. It's all about pattern-based, clean, neat, and manageable code that you can write with MVVM. WPF and jQuery, no way. jQuery is a web-based technology. WPF is a Windows-based technology, so no way it can be there. Vishwanath Lakshmipati, what is the SLA for Kendo UI if there are updates in jQuery releases? Basically, if there is a breaking change, you can always, as a licensee, you can come back and say, no, this broke my things, I need it, so we will be able to fix it. Otherwise, you would have to wait till our next releases, because we don't just release in the middle. We do 3 releases in a year, but we will work with you. If there is a blocking thing for you in your business, we'll try to solve it out. Venkat T, can we use Kendo in Silverlight? No, absolutely no, because Kendo, as I said, Kendo UI is a completely HTML5 based client-side framework. When we say client-side framework, it's a web-based, that is HTML based. Unit testing and MVVM is completely different terminologies. There is nothing that I know that they both intersect. Sundarajan Santanam, is it possible to create native packaging of apps using Icenium? Yes, Icenium does support at the moment 2 packaging mechanisms. One is for the Google Play, that is the Android, and another one for iOS. You do not need a Mac to create an iOS packaging. All you need is Icenium on some, either you can use in a browser, or we have a Windows-based client. We call it as Graphite. You just have to have that, create your projects, right-click and say publish. It will ask you to create the certificates and all those stuff, and then it will be able to generate the APK or the IPK or whatever. I don't know what is that on the iPhone thing. So yes, it's possible. Is there any database support for Kendo? Madhu Subani Patan. As I said, this is a client side, so it's up to you what you want to do. I didn't show a fact of Kendo UI, which is the client side JavaScript data source. All you need is a web service. Or when I say web service, it can be any service which can actually spit out a JSON payload or an XML payload. We will be able to work with those endpoints. You do not have to write any line of code other than saying, for reading a data, I want you to go to this URL. We will do all the HTTP plumbing. We will go get the data, munch it, or whatever you need to do, and then bind it to our control. So yes, that's how you do the database support, because there's no database on the client side, except it's still in nascent terminologies, like, there is a offline DB or whatever the HTML5 will support, but it's still not standardized. Amol Kot, you're talking about, is there any webinar on custom plugin? Well, that's a good, interesting topic. Thanks for suggesting that. Maybe we'll try to bring it in maybe a couple of months or next quarter. We'll try to get that lined up. Not now. We'll surely do that. Murthy, can we use Kendo UI Mobile just for native apps? I'm not sure. I don't think you understand the concept here. The Kendo UI mobile controls are used for a very specific developmental paradigm known as hybrid mobile app, meaning you're using HTML, JavaScript, and CSS to create a mobile app. So that's where Kendo comes in, not for the native. Though we are in the tracks to bring out iOS-based native controls. Maybe that's somewhere down the line. How the application is secure, how the security is handled, well, it's as good as any other ASP.NET or a PHP or a JSP based projects. All you are trying to do is your client side logic is only there. If you're putting your business logics like a credit card number in your JavaScript, well, you got to rethink your architecture. Can we write automation test cases if you're using MVVM plus Kendo UI? Yeah, absolutely. It has got nothing to do with your test case thing. We have something called as Test Studio, which can actually go automate your UI testing. It can record and play. So yes, you can do it. Sundarajan Santanam, you're asking how is it easy to create offline HTML5 apps using Kendo UI? It's very easy. As I said, we have a concept of data source. All you need to do is fill up the data to that. So of course, we do not have any constructs which actually dig into the offline storage, but you would have to write a little piece of code to get the data, give it to the data source, and data source can do paging, sorting, grouping, whatever you want to do, and then bind it to a grid. Yes, we can do that. Pani Kishore Patrudu, XBAP is completely different. When you say WPF is a completely different technology when it comes to an HTML technology. So no, Kendo UI won't run in an WPF. Yes, Prakash Karalia, so you're asking, can we use XML data to fill Kendo UI drop-down list? Yes, you can. Only thing would be to you would need to use our data source. Because as you saw, an array is a primitive thing, so all our controls know how to bind with to an array. But if it's an XML, you would need to use our data source and say, hey, drop-down list, your data source is this, take this field from the XML as a name, take this field from the XML as a value. So you can do that, yes. Murthy, and it's up to you. We are not saying ICNIM is mandatory, but we are telling you that ICNIM makes it easy to create hybrid mobile apps. We give you an IDE where you can do the simulation, you can do the debugging, everything. So it's up to you. Siva Prasad Gali, your question is, Kendo UI will support all kinds of database like SQL Server, Oracle. As I said, this is a client-side technology. It's just the UI controls. The data has to, on a web page, the data has to come from some server. So you need to write that service which can connect to Oracle or whatever it is, your backend. All we need is, from a data Kendo UI perspective, is a JSON payload or an XML payload. So that's it, and we're going to work. Vinod Rajput, you're asking how do we integrate web services and REST-based calls in Kendo UI data binding? Yeah, there is a concept called as data source in Kendo UI. So you will need to pretty much make use of data source. The data source can connect to web service, which is returning the data in a JSON format or an XML format. We cannot work with SOAP. So if you want, you can actually use jQuery, Go, connect your SOAP-based service, get the data as an XML, and then you convert that and then feed it to our data source. Our data source will work binding to the grid, everything. Ramesh Kanagaraj, yes, you can pretty much use Kendo Observable instead of Kendo Observable Object. Basically, Observable Object is in a way inheriting from Observable. Observable just gives the change tracking events, whereas when you use Kendo.observable, internally it converts the object that was passed into observable object. So it's up to you what you want to do. Amol Kot, you're asking for when to use MVVM and when to use Kendo UI widgets. Two different worlds that you're asking about. MVVM is all about pattern-based client-side code creation or code programming. MVVM, Kendo UI widgets are basically, when you want completely client-side power. So that's when you can use Kendo UI widgets, because no markup is generated in the server. Your page is going to be loading faster. All the markup is created at the client side, and that too, as you saw with just the you can use two approaches. One is a JavaScript approach, another one is a declarative approach where you say data-role is drop down, data-bind is this. Otherwise, you can actually use JavaScript way of doing all these things. Venkat T, is Kendo support Android mobiles? Is there any possibility? We already do that. Kendo UI mobile control. Okay, let me bring up that slide deck so that it's easier for you guys to understand. So just take a look at the slide deck that I have. Kendo UI is the brand name, and Kendo UI has three things. Kendo UI Web, which is for web applications like a desktop browser. Kendo UI data visualization, which gives you all the data visualization widgets, and Kendo UI mobile suite, which is for developing hybrid apps. So yes, we do support Android. Basically, it's an hybrid app which can run on any of the platforms. Prabhu Singh, yes, you're asking, is this a good choice to create single page apps? Well, incidentally, next month we have a seminar on webinar on how to create single page apps using Kendo UI. Probably we should sit there and then see how easy it is to create with Kendo UI. But on a serious note, yes, it's very easy. It works very well because everything is client side, so you can play around with the declarative bindings or the JavaScript way of doing things, and yes, it makes a good candidate to create a single page web app. Mutamil Selvan, you're saying if you use any other jQuery plugin, does it impact the Kendo UI? Not that I know of, but it depends on that guy what namespacing he has done. Sometimes if the namespacing is not done correctly, they may clash with whatever we have. So it's up to you to kind of resolve that. Gyan Singh, you're saying, can we delete all grid data in one go? Yes, you can. If I just clear the array, make it null, the grid will be empty. Raj Chaudhary, my requirement is specific. I want to use Kendo UI with the publishing feature of SharePoint. That feature has some problems with jQuery for which there are known workaround. Has Tariq come across a situation where this combination of SharePoint publishing and Kendo UI have been used? Please, yeah, as you see, Abhishek has already said, write to me. So please use that email ID and then write to me, because I'm not very specifically sure about, what exactly is this publishing feature of SharePoint. So you can just come back to me. We'll try to work it out with you. Amol, if you go to demos.kendoui.com/web, you will find all the pull to refresh, all those things demo there. So you can pretty much download 30-day trial and then use it. So the code is all there. Well, Manoj, you're asking for customize the binding. Basically, binding works on a property level. What you can do is you can actually do computed binding, meaning you can, let's say you have a first name and a last name, and then you want a label which needs to display. Okay, let me just quickly show you that. So what you can do is you can actually write a computed thing which can actually compute based on whatever is there, and then do that. Okay, I don't have that. So basically, if you see here, if I change anything, keep looking on the right hand side. It's basically taking that particular thing and then doing that. So you can write a computed thing and then pretty much, do you see this lohit.dow? That's done on the register button click, but you can actually do it. You can tie up this with that, and then it will automatically show you the changed things. So you can do computed things. Well, I think it's 4:18. Thank you very much for everybody who have jumped into this webinar, and then I hope it was helpful for you guys. What we will be doing is we will be actually saving all these questions. We'll come back. We'll write a recap post. Then in the recap post, we'll try to answer each one of your questions. Put it there, and also don't forget that keep looking for the recap post, because we'll be announcing 2 winners, raffle out 2 .NET Ninja t-shirts from Telerik. We'll be doing that, so hopefully we'll be doing that by next week, so keep a lookout for that. I would like to thank Abhishek for handling the Q&A today, so thank you, Abhishek, for taking care of that. And once again, keep looking out for many more webinars from our side. We are doing it pretty much every week, so we have one coming up next week, so there is already a schedule which we have lined up, and in July we will be doing we have a release coming up, so we'll be doing a recap of all the new things that is there in all the technologies that we have released. So some exciting 2 months that are coming up, so I request you to come back, tell your peers if they are interested to sit through these webinars, and then who knows, you can win a .NET Ninja t-shirt. So thank you very much, have a good day and have a good week ahead, and we hope to see you again in the next future webinars. Thank you very much.